care how cold it gets or how many planes come buzzing over my head. I'm through with hiding inside. For 4 years, we've been hiding from the planes, from the Nazis, hiding our fear and hunger from each other. I see my mother hiding her sadness every day. I see her cutting up tulip bulbs for our dinner and leaving none for herself. She can try and hide her frail body under those gray clothes, but I see how weak she is. Her face, her hands. She looks like our grandmother now. But I have to hide my fear. I can't let her see how scared I am when I see that she's starving. I'm the oldest, so I have to be strong for everyone. We haven't seen Father since the early days of the war. He didn't come home one night. We don't know if he's a prisoner or still fighting with the underground, or maybe just hiding. I hear an airplane coming. I'd better go inside. Surely the war must be almost over. I hear even the Germans are starving. It's getting closer. Time to hide.
The winter of 1944 became known as the Hunger Winter for the people of the Netherlands. After 4 years of occupation, this once abundant agricultural country had transformed from a land of rich green fields into a scorched world of battlefield scars. By April of 1945, the war was drawing to an end, but so were the lives of over 20,000 Dutch people who had starved to death throughout the Hunger Winter. 4.5 million Dutch were within weeks of dying. Time was running out.
My brother's been in since 41 as an aircraft engine mechanic in the Bomber Command. I'd hoped to be stationed with him when my parents finally said I could join, but instead, I ended up here in Gloucester. Strange thing. When I finally got to the barracks, after 9 long days and nights on a freezing ship, I was greeted with a picture of my sister. Can you believe it? See, it turns out, my neighbor, Freddie Jones, dated my sister back home, and he's now my new roommate. We even ended up here in the 405 squadron together. Same squad! What are the chances? You know, one thing I haven't prepared for is the cold. Each flight, I go through the same routine because I gotta be ready for temperatures from -40°C to -75°C. So, I put on my thigh-high woolen stockings, my long woolen turtleneck sweater, battle dress uniform with a whistle in case we decide to ditch, and electronically heated coverall. Finally, I cover all that up with an inch-thick padded suit we like to call our teddy bear suit. And then on top of all that, my flight suit. Next, my leather flying boots, my Mae West life jacket and parachute harness, which I like to wear on my seat for a little extra height. They don't call me Shorty for nothing.
Sitting in the coldest, most vulnerable spot on a 7-man Lancaster bomber, Tail Gunner Sergeant Ronald Moyes is the 17-year-old son of an immigrant farmer from Coquitlam, British Columbia. Shorty already has flown round trips of 5 to 7 hours to some of Germany's prime objectives, the symbolic Nazi city of Nuremberg and Hitler's most famous mountain retreat at Berchtesgaden.
How many times count the holes? It sounded like somebody was throwing rocks at us. Crisscrossing searchlights and the shockwaves from anti-aircraft explosions rocked our 17-ton aircraft like it was as light as a bird.
operational training unit, 61 would die before completing their requisite 30 missions. 12 would end up as prisoners of war, and 3 would be wounded and unable to fly again. Only 4 would make it out unscathed, at least physically.
To fly 30 missions. I'm almost there, but some of them have been pretty hairy. This one time, we were flying to Nuremberg. We got shot up pretty bad, but we dropped our payload and made it back safe all the same. You never get used to that feeling that you might not make it back. No, that feeling, it never goes away.
April 28th, 1945. Early this morning, my crew and I were briefed with another crew that had an Australian pilot. They told us that we were going to be sent on a very different kind of mission. Top secret, hush hush. Our bombers were filled with food that we are going to drop over Holland. None of us expected this. No bombs this time, no explosions, just helping people stay alive.
This one time, we were flying to Oslo in Norway. It was tough. We had to fly real low, maneuvering between the cliffs that surrounded the fjords to drop mines in the cold, dark Norwegian Sea. Those mines will help stop the U-boats from sinking our ships in the North Atlantic. It was crazy flying, and we all held on for dear life, but we made it back, all the same, safe and sound, just like we always do.
So, at today's briefing, they told us our mission is going to be a test run. See, the Allied and German commanders have been negotiating to allow food drops for the last couple of days, but haven't been able to reach an agreement. So we're going in anyways. If our mission is a success, and we manage to drop the food without being shot at, Operation Mana will be launched. The worst part, even worse than the loneliness or the fear that maybe this time your luck will run out and you won't make it back, is waking up in those barracks and seeing all those empty cots, never knowing if our chums have been shot down or just transferred to another squadron. So what do? Just keep going, one foot in front of the other, waiting to hear what the next day will bring, hoping that all of this ends soon. Success! We made it back from our test run. Our crew was made up of 4 Canadians and 2 Brits, all of them good guys. The plane I was flying was called Bad Penny. I wasn't too happy about that, but then one of the guys told me that it was from that expression. Like a bad penny, it keeps coming back. So I guess Bad Penny's fine by me. Anyway, we passed the Dutch coast and we saw anti-aircraft guns put in their muzzles in our direction. We even saw tanks that tried to keep their turrets aimed at us. We were staring straight down a lot of barrels. But somehow, we made it through. I don't know how, but we did. We were lucky that the enemy mostly held their fire. There were just a few pot shots from pistols that left a few small holes in the right side of the aircraft near the tail. But no damage. Bad Penny was still fit to fly. And so are we. So tomorrow, Operation Mana begins.
I've been trying to get to the countryside to find some food and help, but it's so far and so dangerous. I went with my neighbor and her daughter. Her husband tried almost 2 years ago and was picked up by the Nazis. He was either imprisoned or sent to work. We don't know where he is now, just like my father. Our mother isn't getting out of bed anymore. My baby brother and sister don't seem to be doing much better. I've been trying to keep them busy inside as much as I can. I am trying to be brave, but I miss my father. I want things to be the way they were.
The morning of April 29th, the first of 8 Lancasters to reach the Dutch shoreline was Bad Penny, flown by 21-year-old Captain Robert F. Upcott of Windsor, Ontario. Over 11,000 tons of food was dropped by the RAF and RCAF in 10 days during the mission, another signal to Nazi Germany that it was losing the war. At noon that day, the BBC broadcast that Operation Mana was going to begin that very day. 200 Lancasters would appear over Holland at 2 o'clock to bring food to the starving people.
To help meet the desperate needs of the Dutch, starving in isolated cities, food supplies from the United Nations are rushed to Holland by air. At an airfield in England, food is being loaded into Allied bombers that only the week before were battering Germany into submission.
We saw almost zero activity on that first mission, probably because nobody knew we were coming. We finally spotted the racetrack called Downdick, which was our drop zone for the day. Lucky for us, we were able to fly straight in without circling around. So in we went.
Keep it a secret among the senior German officers. We had become so used to planes flying overhead night and day, never stopping, and these planes seemed no different. Our greatest fear was that the Allies would make a mistake and drop their bombs on us.
An Australian was with me flying Echelon Port. We were the first to drop our payload once we were over the racetrack. The Australian dropped his at almost the same moment, but I guess I must have waited a little too long because half our load slammed into the bleachers at the end of the race course. I felt terrible, but I could only hope that the cargo had survived.
My baby brother Nicky came running home. I had thought something terrible had happened. But then I saw crowds of people, my friends, my neighbors, running towards the racetrack. They were shouting and crying that crates of food had been dropped from the sky. So Nikki and I ran as fast as we could. And yes, the crates were there, and they were full of food. We could not believe it. All of us were gathered together, laughing and crying and embracing each other. Nikki and I gathered what I could carry in my apron, and then we ran home just as fast as we could. I could not wait to show Mother what we found.
Once the job was done, we left the continent and headed back out over the North Sea. Our radio operator sent a message back to base that the mission had been a success. You know, that run felt different. I don't know. Maybe it sounds kind of stupid, but I think we knew that somewhere down there, in all that ruin, someone had been waiting for a miracle.
We devoured the chocolate first. We are Dutch after all. When we tasted that first sweet bite, we had felt such joy. I had not heard Marguerite and Nikki laugh in so many long months. My heart was suddenly full of hope. We all had aching stomachs from the sweets and the laughter, so of course, we ran back for more. When we arrived, the town leaders were there, making sure that the food was divided up fairly. Everyone pitched in to help carry the sacks of flour and sugar back to our homes. It was the first time we had felt any hope in many weeks. And even though we were all hungry, each of us desperate and tired and weak, no one took more than what they needed.
It's a lucky day today! I left Canada May 3rd, 1944, and now, exactly a year to the day later, I'm ready to fly my 30th and hopefully final mission of the war. I'm happy to be delivering food instead of fire for a change. You know, we really are bringing life instead of death, and that feels pretty darn good.
I only flew that first mission. Everyone wanted in on the operation. To be fair, the assignments were divided up as evenly as possible given the circumstances. It's not that it was a safe mission, no siree. If we strayed even a little from the agreed-to corridor, the enemies would open fire, no mercy given. Still, in that short period, planes were loaded with sacks of flour, egg powder, powdered milk, and dark chocolate. Drops were made over the Western Netherlands, where they were suffering from continued Nazi occupation and one of the harshest winters in recent history. A lot of the trips were near The Hague, but by the end, we were mostly going to Rotterdam. At the same time, Lieutenant General Charles Folks, commander of the 1st Canadian Corps, organized the first conference between the Allies and Germans at a schoolhouse in Achterholt. Canadians made up most of the negotiators, and Folks arranged with the German authorities that any flooding done under German control would be considered a war crime.
By the time we got involved with Operation Mana, we'd switched to flying Mosquitoes in the number 8 Pathfinder group. We would fly in first and drop target indicators. These were colored smoke flares to mark where the food should be dropped. We dropped our payload about 400 yards from these white crosses marked on the ground for us. We had to do it and get out fast. There was a Lancaster flying right behind us, ready to drop his payload. Food parcels were sent down without parachutes. They were dropped from the plane while it was traveling from around 200 miles an hour.
In 1945, in the village of Ehinigen, General Folks accepted the surrender of the German army in the Netherlands.
For the Dutch, the war was over. 2 days later, the formal surrender of Germany to the Allies was signed in Reims, France.
Everyone came out to celebrate today, welcoming the Canadian Army trucks that brought more supplies and their brave soldiers. Even Mother was able to come out for a bit. It is still women and girls as usual. So many of our men and boys are gone. It will take time to rebuild. Things will be different. Our world has changed, and we are changed with it. But I think I'll leave the message that Nikki and I painted on the roof for a while longer. It says, "Thank you, Canada. Bedankt, Canada. Bedankt, Canada."